2002SuperVision presents Rushprint, the cinema of tomorrow. Joining me today, as always, is my co-host Chandler, lead editor for the Pork Rind Times.
And sitting across from me is my great friend Joel from Fat Idiot Weekly. Tonight, we'll be talking about Francis Ford Coppola's latest picture, Megalopolis. This $120 million folly stars Adam Driver as Caesar Catalina, a useless milk-bag architect whose new material Megalon is bound to shake up the streets of New Rome, a parable for New York ruled by its mayor, played by Giancarlo Esposito. Flaccid intrigue and half-baked sci-fi finally come together on the big screen for this much-anticipated wet fart of a send-off for new Hollywood's favorite weed grandpa. Is this what an entire career comes to? Is this what we have learned? Is this the end of cinema? We'll discuss this and more after this quick commercial break.
Introducing a big idea, the construction company building set. The construction company has the only blocks that block. You don't just stack blocks. You use this tool to block them together.
It's fitting that we're talking about Megalopolis this week, the film being about New York and its mayor, and the big news of the week being New York and its corrupt mayor.
Could you believe it? It's almost as if art imitates real life sometimes.
Oh, I really hope it doesn't. I hope Francis Ford Coppola's weird fucking character that he's made here doesn't come to life at all.
I would love to meet this homunculus that Francis Ford Coppola has crafted. But real quick, Joel, what were your expectations going into this film?
He's been making it long enough, hasn't he? It's what, like 1983, I think, is the number that he said. That's when he started making it. And for years, he's written stuff down, got actors together, like put together like a relatively complete pre-production. And then I think suddenly he's realized he's got nothing else going on. He's just gonna do it. He's gonna sell a bunch of wineries that he owns, put together $120 million
of his own money,
and just burn it in a big pile.
Yeah. I mean, this, by what you describe, this history, it sounds like this should be something that's at least put together, right? He's had 40 years. It's been 40 years of time to prep for this, right? He's had the script. He's had time to rewrite it. He's had time to even almost get it put together in the early 2000s, but it got canned because of 9/11. So at least, and for me, from my expectations, I'm like, I'm not going to like this, but it's going to be a movie,
And I assume you don't think it is.
I think that this film not only is bad, which I say about a lot of films. I won't say a lot of films. I say for a handful of films.
A healthy amount of films.
A healthy amount, right. Like I have standards and believe that art should, be somewhat useful for the human psyche. This film not only is not useful for the human psyche, it is extremely caustic to one's mental capacities.
Evil dies tonight!
When does an empire die? Does it collapse in one terrible moment?
I don't know where to begin. Maybe we just begin at the beginning? Is that a good idea?
I mean, we could start with many of the complaints that I have about this film.
When it comes to complaints, it's just that this film has made me turn into cinema sins. Normally, I would never, ever resort to a cinema sin, but this movie just begs it.
Go ahead. We'll put the sins timer up. Just give us a couple of sins real quick.
Let's just keep it up there, actually, and we'll discuss it as we go through, and we'll hit the bell every time.
If you want to talk about the
first point.
beginning, we should probably talk about what beginning, and in fact, what middle. Because this film, like an hour and 20 minutes of setup, honestly, it takes literally, I checked my watch, like an hour and 20 minutes for the satellite to fall and for Megalopolis to even become a thing that this film acknowledges.
An image on the screen. Yes. We'll get to that fucking satellite. We'll get to that fucking satellite.
Why is it the Russians? We're jumping ahead, but why is it the Russians, do you think?
The Soviet, specifically. Which I feel like is...
outdated.
It's outdated. It's obviously from the 80s, right? In the 80s, it's funny. Okay, I'll give him a little wiggle room here. In the 80s, it would have been a little too on the nose. Nowadays, I think it's supposed to represent like the old world order and its, degradation and how it's damaging our society today because of its downfall. Maybe that's one smart thing about this. Is that something that Francis thought about?
Are you going to slowly convince yourself that this film is good over the course of this episode?
What has happened is right after the screening, I felt nothing but dread, sadness, horror. And for a few days after watching it, I could not shake the fact that this film was complete trash. Now, with a little distance, I'm seeing something. Every film has something that can go for it. A broken clock is correct twice a day. Maybe I'll leave it at that. Adam Driver is a superhero?
Kind of. I mean,
he has time
powers?
Yeah,
this time power thing, which, I don't know, I'm baffled by. I don't know why it's there. It doesn't add anything. It's not used for anything.
No. And it's not entirely explained. I don't believe that the film... I feel like we're supposed to connect it with his discovery of Megalon.
Yeah.
This apparent miracle material.
Which, again, like, timing, Megalon, I think the first time we hear the word Megalon is an hour 40. Like, we have 20, 30 minutes left in the film.
It's not clear, and it's possible that it's not connected to Megalon. And it just seems as if he's just stumbled upon, like, one day his ability to stop time. Because the first scene is him testing this out. Okay, so, again, finding what is probably the idea is Adam Driver's character is a representation, a self-insert of Francis Ford Coppola. Right? The architect as the artist, and specifically the filmmaker. It gives you the ability to literally stop time and to craft the world in an image, right? But it's never used outside of these scenes. It's just confounding because it's like, would he not use this more often? Would he not use this for his benefit?
I'm interested in the Caesar being allegory for Francis Ford Coppola making films, because Caesar as a character, I feel like he has nothing going on, for one. Really, like,
very milquetoast.
Just like a blank slate of a man who just kind of sort of says some charming lines in a charming way, but I attribute that more to Adam Driver than I do the character of Caesar.
Right. I mean, he really doesn't feel like he has any impact outside of the few people who interact with him face to face in the shot reverse shot.
Caesar being this metaphor for Francis Ford Coppola, flagging on names here, a lot of Roman names. He's pitting himself against the mayor, which is kind of a studio stand-in, do you think?
You could say he is, the powers that be.
Because he's also up against his family, which is very funny, if it is Francis Ford Coppola, for him to be up against his family.
To the future of our family.
I reckon Jason Schwartzman is the one in real life that's secretly getting him shot.
Who's playing the other side? Yeah, because he's working with the mayor.
It's this weird, like, he's angry at the studios, but clearly having seen this film, I'd say the studios were necessary in his history, like The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. They're great films, and they were made with studios, and this one wasn't, and this one really disjointed and bad. Also, don't forget The Godfather, Apocalypse Now also had other writers, and I think that's a big issue for Francis, as he might not be that good of a writer.
No, and I know a lot of this was given up to improvisation, either on the side of Francis or on the side of the actors. Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that sometimes having that control is necessary. You know, there's a reason why, you know, a nuclear power plant, yes, is creating a nuclear explosion, but the reason it's okay is because it's housed within a very specialized facility. You can't just let the explosion go off and be like, we did it. We created all the energy, guys. Isn't that what we wanted?
I didn't know, like, any of this was improvised. I didn't do much research. I figured I could just go into it knowing the basic background and not have to do fucking homework, apparently, as to why it's so scuffed. But it is the improv, because the dialogue is so all over the place, very, like, student-esque in many places. Like him fucking quoting Hamlet right at the beginning. That's the most embarrassing scene.
Embarrassing.
Tell a lie, actually. It's not the most embarrassing scene, but we'll get to the poker scene.
One of the most embarrassing things. It's exactly. It's one of those things where, like, maybe you improv'd on site, like, oh, maybe he would quote Shakespeare here, but I don't care whether you're a student filmmaker or you are at this level, you cannot quote the fucking Hamlet monologue.
The Hamlet monologue as well. The only one that Americans know, apparently.
Probably the only one Francis knows. And it has nothing to do with it.
Doesn't even tie in, yeah.
Has nothing to do with it.
He's just quoting it to show he's a smart guy, which you could show that he's a smart guy in a way that makes me interested in him as a character.
Quoting Shakespeare without any proper analysis for what they're saying. He says to be or not to be, in the sense of, like, oh, as in, like, to be the best possible person and to have the best possible architecture, or not to be, or to just choose this casino and the lesser route. But that's not what that monologue is about. It's about whether or not to kill yourself. You know, just, like, fact check that real quick. But there's a lot of Shakespeare in this, a lot of, like, misguided, you know, it's the power dynamic of the rich family and the other powerful family, the mayor and Caesar Catalina, right? And the intrigue with the mayor's daughter and her love affair with the enemy, with Caesar.
I think she should have been the protagonist. I think she's a much more interesting character. It's kind of like Dr. Watson being the protagonist of Sherlock, because the outsider perspective is someone both we can relate to more, and also someone who can have character moments that Caesar can't, because he is basically he's just a statue of a great man. He's not actually a person.
Right. She is... Natalie Emmanuel is supposed to, like, pull back the curtain. And she kind of does in the ill-fated arena act.
Extended sequence.
Whatever that is, Act 2, Act 3, extended sequence. She is raising questions. She is investigating. She's kind of looking behind the scenes and looking into this world. And as the viewer, that's what we need. We need the character who's going to guide us through this and show us what exactly we're getting ourselves into.
The worst character, though, if I had to put my money down on it, And it's the only other name I remember, other than I don't remember any fucker's name in this film, because they're all not said enough and really boring.
They do not say the names enough. Oh my god. Anyways, go ahead.
I remember Wow Platinum, which I could only assume
We can all remember
one
that.
of Coppola's mistresses said to him upon receiving a silence gift. Wow Platinum as a character, Aubrey Plaza does a great job. She's having fun.
Yes.
She feels like she's playing her character in Parks and Recreation when she jokingly plays like posh evil women.
You think I haven't been around the world? I've been everywhere, darling. I'm a very wealthy woman. My husband's kept me in the finest clothes from Bergdorf Goodman, you see.
Megalopolis.
So it feels like a jokey, sarcastic performance, which I don't know if that helps or hinders, but it makes it more fun to watch at least.
I agree, but the issue that I find with the performance, not her performance, like it's a fantastic performance, but it feels like it's the wrong one to give, or at least the movie would be very different if it made more sense.
I think most of the problem is in how she's written, and this is a part of a bigger problem, which is how Francis Ford Coppola writes women.
Yes.
Because he's real fucking bad at it, let me tell you.
All the women in this film are just...
I have a compilation of my best lines that women say in this film.
Please, and we'll put a ding after each one.
Weird fucking, like, pornographic lines right at the beginning when Well Platinum says, "Your anal is hell," and then swivels around
no,
Adam
don't remind me.
Driver and says, "But I'm oral as hell." Which is fucking weird thing to say. We have, during the Colosseum scene, I believe the mayor is talking about Caesar as a womanizer, and the mayor's wife says, "Womanizer," as if the woman had nothing to do with it. We know it's written by Francis Ford Coppola, a man who warns women he's gonna non-consensually kiss them at rap parties. Like, he's a fucking weird guy, and for him to be taken like a victim-blaming stance, fucked up.
And this film also stars Dustin Hoffman and other, in Francis Ford Coppola's own words during the Q&A, canceled individuals.
Oh, we can talk about the Cancel Club later. We can talk about the cast of this fucking film. Before I just have one more line that I laughed out loud at right at the end, when John Voight, another cancelled crew member, throws his bedsheet aside to reveal he's wielding a bow and arrow. And in the most, like, post-Freddy Krueger slasher film quip I've ever heard, just exclaims, "Wall Street slut, this is your closing bill," before relatively non-climactically shooting our lead villain once, and then she's dead. It's like 10 minutes before the end of the film. She just dies very quickly.
Just wrapping her up.
We haven't talked about Shia's performance, the other member of the Cancelled Club.
The one member of the Cancel Club that I'm going to give a passing grade to.
Oh, I strongly disagree. I think he's...
Interesting. So his character or his performance or both?
His character's bad. I hope we can agree on that. His character
is a bad person.
Not even that. Just kind of like has no motivation is my problem.
The motivation is stuck in the weeds. It's a little too pedestrian and surface in the sense that it's like he is the conniving cousin who has something to gain. Therefore, he is, motivated to act in this way.
But he has like no reason to be the revenge. Like, there's no backstory for him. He just turns up. He is revenge cousin. He's not given any reason to be. And then sometimes he's like stupid and sex driven, and then sometimes he's a political mastermind who's riling up a fascist crowd. He just like switches that on instantly to give us like a bit of a villainous plot to the film that's just kind of been listing lazily along this whole time.
Right. The way it just so wholeheartedly leans into the fascism, the Nazism, all of that. Again, it is very sudden. It's very like, because it feels like it doesn't have the know-how, the knowledge, the ability to identify fascism, to show him as a fascist figure without literally the swastika.
Definitely wanted to say he literally just has a tree trunk shaped like a swastika just to show the audience that he's a fascist now.
Remember, like, just really dig in, like, really know. Because, like, I couldn't tell this guy shouting all of this, like, make America great again stuff was a fascist. I was like, oh, right.
Before that, the way he starts out by being a fascist is by saying, Caesar demolished these people's homes, give them some money. Quite a nice thing to do. Like, call me a fascist, but giving homeless people money is quite nice. It felt like a sudden switch. I was like, I was expecting Francis Ford Coppola. I was expecting his turn into, like, the people's champion, even though he's a little evil, but he's the people's champion. But then, again, suddenly he's wearing Nazi insignias and, like, rallying crowds, and it's just out of nowhere, completely.
Yeah. It really is just for the sake of using that iconography. Francis Ford Coppola, thesis number 2, Francis Ford Coppola does not understand politics, world history, really anything outside of a book of quotes by Marcus Aurelius.
Utopias turn into dystopias.
The universe is change.
If you want to talk about quotes, we can talk about the poker scene, the worst scene in the film. By far.
I'm handing you this one. I know you want to talk about this. This is your scene.
I texted you in the middle of the scene just to express how much I hate it. I believe I called them Gadsden waving ass hats.
Yeah.
Just like you go to your local college, go to the economy class, the freshman 101 economy class. You'll hear Megalopolis dialogue
verbatim. And that's what bothers me so much. Is that it would be one thing if this movie was as cheesy and messy and crazy as it is. But the politics, the philosophy is so fucking kindergarten level.
It is, and the film's positing itself as this, like, grandiose intellectual fable about, like, the dangers of letting the Hollywood studio cut your film, I guess, is what he's saying is dangerous.
That's dangerous, is not letting the free market do its stuff.
But the language that the film uses is nowhere near what Francis thinks it is. I'm not saying there's anything bad with, like, unintellectual dialogue in films. I love horror films, right? They're not smart. People get stabbed. I love blood effects. But if you're pretending to be profound, like, be profound. Don't just fucking say quotes from Econ 101.
And it's just the scale of it. This should be so amazingly complex and amazing. A film that came to mind when talking about, you know, how far it misses its marks is the film The Battle of Algiers. That is a film about, you know, rising up against the powers that be and kind of the figures that lead it. That film was made for about, I don't know if this is in today's money or then money, but even still, it was made for $800,000 US dollars. And that film is a fucking masterclass in understanding Algerian history and the FLN and, like, colonialism and imperialism and all of these very complex systems. And the most that Francis Ford Coppola is able to muster out of $120 million is you should just, like, let powerful people do their thing and let them you know, blow up blocks without any oversight. Caesar and the mayor, whose name is Franklin Cicero, Francis.
He has his weird speech where it's like, call me Frank, like Francis, but his name isn't Francis. But Francis Ford Coppola's name is Francis.
But the mayor is not the insert.
Francis is Caesar, and the mayor
and
is...
the baby is going to be named... Okay.
Apparently the baby has a name. I didn't know that. They didn't say that in the film unless they did, in which case,
No, they
shut up.
I think it was right before they started playing poker and quoting economics that they were going to either name the boy Francis or the girl, the name of the mother, or like, I don't know, like something Sunny something.
Fucking Sonny Hope.
Yeah, Sunny Hope.
Which is on the nose. We can talk about on the nose a lot with this film.
Oh, exactly, because that's all it is. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about how this film is a libertarian wet dream. It posits this idea. It wants to be democratic. Francis wants this idea of a great debate.
We're in need of a great debate about the future.
He mentioned this in the Q&A. He reaffirmed the point when Caesar has his big point, his big last stand on top of his weird like jelly structure, and we need a great debate about how the world is going to run or whatever. There is no debate. There is no input outside of the 2 to 5 powerful individuals that this movie bases itself around and who lead the way. Anybody who is not one of these influential figures are just crowds. He puts them into either crowds of like the people who go behind Shia, who are these kind of like January 6 absolute lunatics, or they're just kind of the kind of lazy and gluttonous people who are around, Cicero and nobody matters. Nobody exists. There is no people. There is just the individuals, and that is objectivism. This is the Fountainhead. I mean, this is the fucking BioShock. I mean,
More like BioShock Infinite.
well, yeah, with a little angle on fascism.
I meant a little worse. But
That too, the worst of the series. This film does not know what its philosophy is. It's throwing a bunch against the wall. As soon as they hit the wall and fall on the floor, they forget about them. They throw them away. They move on to the next thing. Every idea exists for as long as it's on the screen, and then it's fair game after that. Anything is possible. Everything from the ideas, everything from the satellite that crashes and then seemingly has no effect afterwards. Like, it's just like, oh, and some people die. Okay, anyways, here's the next part,
But that's another thing I didn't get about the satellite crashing, is that this is the site for Megalopolis, where this satellite crashed. But, the people who are against Caesar, like the unwashed masses, as they're portrayed, are complaining that he demolished their houses to build Metropolis. Which one is it? Did he demolish houses, or did a satellite demolish their houses? Because
I think the satellite demolished the other half.
What a shitty incident for that neighborhood,
sucks.
that half of their houses were demolished. They're like, thank God our houses stayed up,
We still have these half.
and only our neighbors were demolished.
Here's a fucking nuclear satellite. So after the satellite fell, did a small Adam Driver appear before you and answer the question of a press member?
Mr. Catalina, you said that as we jump into the future, we should do so unafraid. But what if when we do jump into the future, there is something to be afraid of?
We need to talk about this real quick. I don't know how familiar you are with it or not.
This William Castle gag, which
Yes.
I'm just going to be upfront with you, I'm all for, actually.
I would be like if this film like landed this bit, it would have almost made me believe in this film. But at least at my screening, which was at a big screen at the IMAX special screening, Adam Driver becomes a little Adam Driver at the bottom of the screen. And a paid actor in the theater, the lights come up, he walks to the stage in front of the IMAX screen with a microphone and mic stand, and he asks a question. And then Adam Driver waits for a minute because he has to wait just in case there's an incident in some other screening. And then he answers something about fear or whatever. I don't fucking know.
Well, there's nothing to be afraid of if you love.
I'm to understand it's the same response every time because it's not actually
Yes.
a live feed. It's a pre-recorded film.
The idea was that it would have been a live feed and maybe even an AI Adam Driver.
Oh my god. No, that makes so much sense in a bad way.
In a bad way now, but it makes sense why it's existing now, why they even bothered with it, this half measure that they took in the first place. Is you, as the audience, were supposed to, I don't know how you would get 100 people to consolidate to one question in a reasonable amount of time.
Maybe you just let them all ask a question. You know, everyone takes turns. Everyone's here for 10 hours.
The great debate. No questions off to the fucking board. You were supposed to ask Adam Driver and he would have answered.
It's fucking like it's funny, the idea. I don't want AI in films. It's a funny idea, though, because it wouldn't have worked well.
No, but obviously they put their fist in a little too deep, because now they have this part in the middle of the movie where the lights are supposed to come up, and there's a plot point that Adam Driver is supposed to address people, and it's like, oh shit. And it makes me wonder what's going to happen with like subsequent non-IMAX screenings or like non-special screenings, you know?
I mean, probably just like add an actor saying the line in the film itself. It's cool making a normal film, to be honest. Hire actors to voice things on the film. It's worked since we invented talkies.
We don't even have to put the lights up for it. It's amazing. It just happens in the movie.
Don't have to hire a guy from Reno, Nevada to go to the Reno, Nevada screening of the film and say the line. You could put it in the film. You pay one person one time, and that person could live near you, Francis.
And that person in Reno, Nevada has to be at every screening. Oh, that's his job now.
I would kill myself. It's gotta be...
And that means you have to watch Megalopolis all those times, too. Ooh.
It's gotta be a theater worker, surely. If they're like...
No. I mean, like a company sent these people out.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Didn't even plan it well.
No.
I mean, like...
No.
Cinema workers have been abused for decades. Why not throw a little more on, Francis? You know, you don't have to hire an actor. Just get a teenager who's been working the butter stand for like 3 hours to come in and say the line and then leave.
And then the rest of the film happens, the finale, which is basically a slow unraveling of nothing.
The finale that doesn't fit the film because, as we've said, I agree with you. The entirety of this film is like an objectivist dream. Big power man versus government. But the ending, suddenly, he's giving this speech to the unwashed masses, as I called them, because they all hate him. And of course, because he's a super genius and everyone around him are his sheep.
Are morons.
He's the shepherd. They all believe him instantly when he's saying all of this, even though he's essentially giving, like, we are the dreamers of dreams, is what he's saying to them. With this stock violin music that's just like embarrassing. The film, I didn't even notice a score. It was so like underutilized. But that scene specifically, the stock violin that plays over his Willy Wonka speech is distractingly like poorly placed.
And then magically the mob just decides to stop being a mob. They kill Shia. They
string him up like
Mussolini.
Straight up.
And then they all stand in Times Square with the baby, and it's beautiful. Wait a second. I thought this was supposed to be the fall of an empire. This is supposed to be this is Megalopolis, a fable. Let's not forget that.
What did we learn?
This is nothing. You just let Elon Musk fucking make his dream project of killing everybody, and we'll all be happy. The people who survive. I mean, come on. I mean, really, come on. It's embarrassing. I would be so embarrassed if I was him and this is the movie I put out. I really would. I hope I hate to be this person. You know I'm not this kind of person to put this on other people, actually. I actually wish that he feels bad about this movie.
Oh, I hope it's his last film. And I'm not saying like Francis go die,
Die tomorrow.
but retire on making your dream movie. I hope you're happy with it, Francis. I'm not, but I hope you are.
I hope he isn't. I really hope I don't let him get away with this.
It's fine, he'll die tomorrow. You know, through that ending, all I could think to myself was, this is the ending from Star Wars: The Phantom Menace.
The Phantom, oh my
when
god.
When they all give Boss Nass the big glowing ball and everyone's cheering on Naboo.
Megalopolis.
I bet George Lucas loves this film.
I bet he didn't watch it. I bet he doesn't go to the fucking cinema. He goes to the mall food court and eats hot dogs and then goes home and enjoys his $2.4 billion. He could have funded this like 10 times over, but he didn't. Because he didn't
Francis
want
could
it.
have just asked George. What's George doing with that money?
George doesn't want that shit. George said, no. Sell your wineries.
Or maybe he did go to George and like George was like, I will give you $150 million. Let me just check out the script real quick. And like Francis was like, yeah, of course. And then George just never returned that phone call.
He said it was an affront to Kurosawa. So
I mean, it kind of is. It really is. I bet this film wants to be a Kurosawa film.
Oh.
I can feel it.
Alligators have the right idea. They eat their young.
The gates of Megalopolis are open!
Wait, we haven't even once, and that's a real fucking testament to the story of this film. We have not talked about the visuals yet.
We haven't.
No.
I mean, they're the best part, but it's a low bar that they cleared.
Right. I mean, the best part about being kicked in the nuts is that eventually it stops hurting. You know, that's the bar that we're talking about here. Visually, it is a messy, messy mess.
It is.
There are parts that look fantastic, that are really cool and really interesting. And then there are parts that look like it was made in like, they used like the 2002 version of Photoshop or something.
Oh, I saw
like they forgot to upgrade.
I saw a clip of this film somewhere, and I audibly said, this looks like a full moon feature. This looks so cheap
Seriously.
and flat and like shot in an afternoon with a 2-minute time budget. Just real thrown together shit.
And it jumps in between visual styles so much that I think that they just kind of, however Francis felt like the scene should look that day, I guess, is just, oh, now it's kind of Dollhouse. Now it's like really gritty and like very harsh lighting. Or
the day when Francis found all of these color gels backstage that he put over the lights and decided to shoot it like a giallo that day.
He forgot he had them. And the scene where the really bad CGI statues just like are animated and fall over because they're sad because Liberty is gone.
I'm pretty sure that statue falling over is the only woman in this film that doesn't have to get naked. I'm pretty sure.
Wah, wah. Even the poor fucking like virginal Vesta.
Oh, that
despite
shit.
Being obviously not that. It's just really just like the most, because you see it from the very beginning. From the very beginning of the scene when Shia LaBeouf hands the guy the fucking USB, you're like, oh, come on. Like, give this woman a break.
Which is already fucking hilarious that this whole world has been so like lavish and a little Art Deco with it and very fancy. And he's brought down by a USB stick. $20 at Best Buy. But that whole thing with it's clearly supposed to be like Disney stars are a clone of each other, and Disney sucks, and they're like raising money on these traditional like virginal Christian values. And literally at the end of the performance, she says the line, "You can see right through me," which is embarrassingly direct of Francis to put in the script.
I mean, and really putting it on like the acts, the talents, when really it should be pointed at. Well, of course, this is also the extended scene where the mother says, you know, the woman, what was it?
As if the woman had nothing to do with it.
As if the woman had nothing to do with it. In the same scene, you know, does not possibly suggest that it is this lavish world that is, or the people in power who are literally selling these children into a predatory world, mostly just so that I guess Caesar can get off on the charges later. Why can we can we be real for a second? Why did Francis feel the need to kind of absolve pedophiles? Why did he think he needed to do that?
Where he's like, he's going to jail for statutory rape, and then the next fucking scene, she's like, no, I found her birth certificate. She's lying about her age. So again, it's putting all the blame on her. Also, I think they say she came from like Venezuela or some foreign country, which was a weird it's a birth certificate. You don't need that information. The information we needed was that she's older than she's saying she is.
But the point stands. Why did we start this if this is how we were going to not end it?
He's getting ahead of the press. Eyes on Francis. He's got something hidden.
How many people are canceled in this film?
I wouldn't be shocked if Francis... He was already, like, cancelled for his weird non-consensual kissing
the director
party.
himself is. You got fucking Shia LaBeouf. You got Jon Voight.
Dustin Hoffman, briefly.
Yeah, Dustin
Hoffman for 2 scenes, and then he is comically crushed by a collapsing roof, and that's all we see of him.
I understand. No, I don't understand, actually. I take it back. I really take it back.
I want to talk a little bit about a different film.
Please.
Just to save our sanity. There's this anime film I watched 2-3 years ago, fittingly called Doomed Megalopolis, right? So the anime is a retelling of like Japanese history where Tokyo in the film is destroyed by a man-made earthquake. Sounding familiar?
Sort of like a man-made satellite. Very cool.
It's rebuilt in a modernized megalopolis form, starting with an underground railroad system that they're building. And the villain of the film, he both looks and acts like a fascist dictator, and he just wants like complete destruction of Tokyo in the name of traditional values, which is what I think Megalopolis wanted to be, or at least should have been.
Should have been.
That's a story that it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The 3 main things you need for a story, and it has characters you can identify with and characters you can easily hate. And I know, like, I think the last time Francis put together Megalopolis was like early 2000s with Nick Cage. Related to him, a family member that may have tried to kill him with a bow and arrow, we're not sure. But yeah, he said something about not wanting to do it because it's set in New York and 9/11 happened. He didn't want to make a film about rebuilding New York after a tragedy. I think that would have been the perfect time to release that film, actually, is post-George Bush starting the Iraq War. It would have something to say. You have a direct story link to a real-life event that audiences can identify and say, oh, this is about rebuilding after 9/11. This is about America's government putting war before the people that have been affected at home. You could say so many interesting things with a post-9/11 Megalopolis movie that in the modern day, he just didn't say anything.
No, I mean, he really... He dropped it at a time when he was unable to really produce a message of worth. This film, you know, speaking of that 9/11, post 9/11 thing, and this going back to the 80s, this feels like a bit of an archaeological dig, where you see like the movie that might have existed in the 80s, the movie that might have existed in the 2000s, sort of popping its head out every now and then really just ending up being washed away by what is the 2020s movie, which is a very just kind of like, you know, Trump is a horrible person, but it's just a Trump bad movie, and, you know, don't trust the government, man.
I think it also is very vapid. I think
Yeah.
people are making analogies to like Hollywood studios and Francis, and I think that is, I mean, I think it's far less interesting to say studios have done me wrong than it is to say something about like the world we live in or something that affects everyone. I think Francis has made a selfish movie that isn't fun or interesting enough to justify being a selfish movie.
That's why I want him to feel bad about this, because it just shows that New Hollywood never had any guts. It never had anything. It only cared about itself. They were all the Hollywood brats, literally. He's dragging down the world with him and just using the plight and the horrors of people who are under the thumb for his own, misanthropic quibble with the studios. It's horrible.
Megalopolis.
I discussed with a friend of mine that the thing with New Hollywood and the criticism against it is that it is not as subversive as you think it is. Basically, what it did is it made women get naked. It made people get shot with guns, more violent and real. But at the end of the day, it's still Hollywood. And it just feels bad because I feel like if you compare the works of like Kurosawa or Bergman, who had to work their lives in the cinematic world and were never able to sit on their laurels, their huge paychecks from their massive IPs, they cut their teeth and they made their craft. Francis Ford Coppola has made some amazing films. There's no question, but he stopped so early because he just had to sit on The Godfather and Apocalypse Now as a media, as an idea. I really think that this is a film that feels like it should have come out in the middle of his career back then, certainly back in the 80s, or the sense that if he actually had a bit of artistic talent gained from putting out movies not for the purposes of filling his coffer, maybe this film would have actually had some merit to it because he would have actually had some skills. Otherwise, I don't recommend this film at all. I think that this is a horrid picture. I'm disgusted that it exists. I'm sorry for this first episode to be such a downer. I really, Joel, I'm never this negative about anything.
I fully agree with you 100%, though I can't recommend anyone go see this film at all. It's a waste of time. It's a death throw from an old man who is lamenting his own career, and we're in the middle of so much. We don't need to hear his bullshit. It's not our problem. He's not our clown. Let him be.
But Joel, did you ever consider that maybe both sides are bad?
Oh,